Hey everyone, it's Ellis, and this is going to be the, I think, third take at this. I just recorded a 43-minute version of the patch rundown. This is going to be the worst patch rundown that I have ever done. I am having a really bad day, and I'm very behind on time, and this patch rundown should have been done 12 hours ago, but yeah, that one did not happen either. So rather than do another 43 minutes and then be late for MSI, I am just going to give overview on the champions since I am Mental Boom, but I have not missed a patch rundown, I think, in like 4 years or something, so I don't want to just randomly miss one. The Olaf changes, basically, the way that you can look at this is he's going to start building Trinity Force, he's going to start building Sterix. All of his buffs are really big for him, and he'll probably end up in top lane because he wants access to the base levels. He wants access to gold. He wants access to like these types of things. I think the Olaf changes are absolutely fantastic. I think that his ability to possibly even go W max or something in top lane because of the ability to trade against him is going to be really hard because that's really powerful base scaling per point. The fact that it has a W auto reset makes it very good for trading. The shield is really big, and just the way that it can combo and stuff, and his new passive is totally fine. The thing that they did with his AD at level 18 makes it, again, Trinity Force, and then because the passive base AD is up, it means Sterix is now, again, another viable item on him. And the other thing about Ragnarok, the resists no longer drop off, and because they no longer drop off, it means that he's not, he's able to actually go glass cannon, and he's able to play through his R, play through his W, and play through the shields and everything. And he's not as dependent now as having healers or enchanters or something on his team in order to amplify his strengths and make it so he doesn't totally fall off in mid-game and late game, because previously he would just run in and do, nothing for the most part, right? So Olaf changes are absolutely fantastic. I think that he's going to land really well. There's always a chance I'm like wrong on reading the numbers and like how I'm envisioning it. I do think he's going to be better top lane than he is jungle, just because of the things that I just mentioned, with like really liking base levels, liking gold, liking getting to those items. There might even be something, because now he has built-in armor shred on his Q, that he'll end up having like a lethality variation of his builds. Like maybe he goes like clips or something like that. And he plays with W and he plays with R, and Q's obviously his next max, and that way he doesn't rely on his E, which is still going to have his true damage built into it. The R being able to be maintained permanently inside of fights, I think, is going to be really big. I think this probably means that he's going to be taking Ghost. He might be doing like one of those things in top lane where he goes either Ghost Ignite or he goes Flash Ghost, or maybe even Ghost Exhaust, because he just wants to stay on top of you and he just wants to make sure that you don't deal damage to him. So we might be getting a very unique top laner out of all of this, and I think that Riot did a really good job with this mini rework to Olaf. Taliyah. So this, I don't know how long I spent reading this. I did hypothesize that, much like Rumble, I think that what Riot has just done with Taliyah is they made her have a lot of really weird mini games, and I think because of that, I think that Taliyah's already one of the like bottom 5 least popular champions in the game. Not a lot of people play her. Even when they did, her best role was actually support. It was not mid or jungle. Now they're trying to make her go into the jungle. I feel like with the weird mini games that they're adding to her, the fact that she's like she has all these new damage types depending on like where she's standing, what abilities she's casting. Is she throwing the one rock, or it doesn't feel super intuitive. They've removed damage from her W. They've moved it into the E, but like the E, you need a lot of AP value in the later stages. It just feels all really weird. Taliyah's like passive early on is nerfed. Her R early on is nerfed. They made it so she doesn't get immediately knocked off if she ends up taking damage. But for the most part, it just seems like this rework's a failure. I don't know. I don't like it. I said actually in one of the rundowns that was like 40 minutes long that the file didn't end up saving. It ended up, just breaking, I guess. I thought that like the direction that they're trying to go with Taliyah just doesn't really make sense, and it just feels really bad. And I feel like I think that Riot has actually found a way to make her less enjoyable than she was before, because they've taken away some of her early game power, I feel like, or at least from high level players. I think that they've taken away some of her early game power. Maybe I'm totally wrong. Maybe I'm underestimating the one rock throw that's like, this one, right? Not just a rock. now consumes the workaround to fire a single boulder that deals double damage. Maybe I'm underestimating this one rock thingy, but for the most part, I just feel like the whole Taliyah stuff is just a mess. They're not like simplifying her. I actually think that they made her a little like weirder now. That the W doesn't deal any damage, which feels a little bit weird. They've now gated her into having to full combo you, whereas before she had options to not just rely on full combo. But all in all, I don't know. I feel fantastic about the Olaf change. The Taliyah one I don't really feel that good about, and I don't think that you should either, but that's just my take. Ahri, E cooldown increased, R cooldown increased to all ranks. Charm is going to be 12 to 14 seconds. Spirit Rush is going to go down by 10 seconds, not the end of the world. It's not an ability that you immediately cast off cooldown. The Charm, you know, it helps you in laning phase. If Ahri misses, it gives you a little bit more of a window to play against her. The problem is that Ahri is like one of the safest stat checkers in the entire game. I would say even more so than Victor and Syndra. In most cases, I think it's a tragedy that she was as popular as she was in Spring Split, and how many people were picking her and how many people weren't just picking her counters or like champions that are really good against her. So I think that these nerfs are very, very light, and I think that like Ahri shouldn't be getting picked in pro anyway. I do think she's still one of the best solo queue champions, and I think with a nerf like this, I think she still will remain one of the best solo queue champions that you can end up actually picking in mid because she just sort of is able to do everything that you would want to do inside of solo queue. Braum, the passive cooldown decreased late, damage reduction increased, passive concussive blows, 8 to 6 seconds, 8 to 4 seconds, and then unbreakable, the resists are going up. I think Braum is a fantastic counter pick support that is like a melee engagey, you know, type of champion. I think that these types of buffs that he is getting is really nice for him, and I like that Riot are going this direction with him. Hecarim, Q80 scaling, W increase. So the rampage damage is going up on the bonus AD. It's going up by 5%. And then they have reduced 4 seconds off of his last maxed ability, I believe. So really, really big buffs for, I feel like, top lane Hecarim, but obviously jungle Hecarim will do it as well. Trinity Force lethality type things. You know, the Hecarim's the build like UwU's and stuff in order to deal damage. Like lethality Hecarim ends up getting a little bit of love here. And then that's pretty much where they're going with that. Trinity Force Hecarim, Divine, like things like that are going to be getting buffed. Master Yi. I think the Hecarim changes are fine. I don't know. I don't know where Riot's going to end up landing on Hecarim. Mastery, our bonus attack speed reduced. So Highlander, the attack speed is reduced at level 11 and it's reduced at level 16. Not the end of the world. Level 11 really is where he does spike. Now he loses a dagger off of his build, which does feel really bad. I will be honest, that does feel a little bit bad. But the reason that like you would be picking Yi normally is because you have like some sort of a combo in your team composition, at which point, you know, losing a dagger, not the end of the world. Or if you're playing Yi inside of solo queue, you're probably doing so at like lower MR or something like that, where these changes are not going to be as impactful, and it's not the reason that you're picking Yi there. So in that regard, I think it's fine. Nidalee, base health reduced. She ends up losing an auto attack. She's inside of the jungle. It's not the end of the world. It's probably not going to play. I would wager that this does not play a part in like, except for like 1 in 200 games, to the point where it actually changes the entire outcome of the game or something. I feel like this is such a super, super small nerf that it's totally fine. The Pyke changes. So what they've done with Pyke is they make him regen a little bit of extra HP inside a laning phase. Doesn't matter. They give him more mana. Mana was never the problem with Pyke. Pyke is like permanently playing with full mana. It just doesn't make any sense that they would ever like give him mana or think that like giving mana is somehow like a buff. The nerf that they've done to him is that now Pyke doesn't have his ultimate up as often, which is actually a pretty big deal for him. And the other thing about it is that he loses 300 gold now per your cut. So that is a really big nerf. He also loses the ability to kill you by himself in lane and give himself 600 gold. So it's a very big nerf to mid lane Pyke, but it's also just a nerf in general to other types of Pykes. So like you support Pyke, obviously. This is a very, very big nerf for Pyke. So there's no way around it. He is just going to probably be missing anywhere from, I would say, 900 to 1,500 gold on average inside of a game, which is actually a really big deal. That does mean that he actually, on average, I think will be playing with one less Dirk, which does make his mid to late game transition a lot worse. Renata Glass, base armor decrease, passive damage decrease. So Renata's all in, or, facing her and all inning her early is just going to be a lot easier. A lot of her all ins right now are mostly set up off her arm pull stuff. I think that just making it so that you're able to trade against her earlier on is definitely a nice, cool thing for her. And that's pretty much it. Renekton. So Renekton is getting buffs. When one of the patch rundowns that got corrupted, or broke, whatever. I did say that Renekton is like a Protoss unit that just like doesn't quite have the stats, but it's still good because bad players can't play against Protoss. So Renekton, this will probably put him back on the radar almost immediately. Having the base AD actually increased by 7 is actually kind of a big deal. I don't know if this will make him go like Trinity Force or Sterix or anything like that. With the changes or something, the health growth obviously very, very nice for Sterix, and then the cooldown in the later stages as well as the base damage on his W going up as much as it is actually a pretty big deal. The base damage going up is massive for any of his builds, and then Dominus dealing a lot more damage. So all of a sudden, Renekton has a lot more all-in potential. And it is a lot scarier to face him inside of laning phase. The cooldown on his W in the early laning is going to be noticeable. It means that he can't set up and trade with you as frequently as he would like. But you could just put 1 point in it to offset that pain that you would normally be feeling early on, and then you're not really going to feel it. And even if you do put 1 point into it, it's not like you're totally wasting something. You are getting some damage, and if you have the empowered, then you're actually getting 45 points of damage. So it's actually pretty big scaling. And then Dominus is really good. Rengar, W damage monsters decrease. So not the end of the world. I do think that Rengar inside of the jungle should only be picked with mid or top Ivern. I think outside of that, top lane Rengar is better than Rengar. Top lane Ivern, jungle or mid or Ivern Rengar in general, I do think is one of the most broken combos in the game right now. It's one of the strongest power levels that we've ever had in the game since Season 9 Karthus. And I do hope that we do see it at MSI. You guys might have seen that I was doing it on stream with one of the famous Rengar players in Korea a couple of weeks ago. And then when Caps and Yankos got to Korea, they were doing it a little bit on in their games. You guys might have noticed that. On tracking the pros or something. So do hope to see it. Shyvana, W damage tick rate decreased. E Flame Breath now applies marks to enemies that enter the zone. Very nice quality life buffs for Shyvana. That's pretty much it. Sion, very balanced buff or balanced nerf to Sion. They're obviously doing this because of the boss's Korean solo queue, Korean solo queue adventure, and everything that he ended up achieving there. So I think that's really good. They just make it so that, the kamikaze gameplay style is going to get nerfed a little bit, and I think that's totally fine. I think Sion's totally still viable. Thresh, passive AP and bonus armor per soul increase. W shield strength scaling with souls increase. So I will be honest that I do not know the average amount of souls that Thresh gets per game. 0.25 ability power and bonus armor per soul going up. Not the end of the world, I think, for like support Thresh. W Dark Passage. So the reason that this is like maybe okay is because I think it could equate to an auto attack in early laning by having the 1 extra soul. So what I mean by that is that normally in early laning in a 2-on-2 or a 3-on-3 or 2-on-3 or 3v2, etc., sometimes Thresh will just throw out the lantern and give the teammate the shield. Outside of that, I don't think this is really that big of a buff because most of his shields are used as retreats, and you don't end up chewing through the entirety of the shield. And that's pretty much it. I think that's how you should look at it. Passive Varus stack speed gained on minion and champion kills increased. W magic damage on hit increased. This is really big for on hit Varus and hybrid on hit Varus, or like AP Varus. Very big for AP Varus actually. Passive Living Vengeance is going to go up by 10% bonus attack speed on non-champion kills and 10% attack speed on champion kills. Bladed Quiver. This is the ability that Varus maxes last, I think, in almost all cases, but I think that there are situations where he maxes at second, in which case you do get access to 6 extra, magic damage on hit, which is nice because magic damage is always the lower value of the armor and magic resist thing. So, it's probably like getting like the equivalency of what, like 10 physical damage or something on an ability at like max point. I mean, it is kind of negligible, but I mean, hey, you'll take it, right? Hullbreaker. This is the thing that I'm really sad about. I had a rant on it. I actually think I'm probably just going to do a separate rant on it. I'll probably do it on stream later during the MSI. Basically, I do not agree with the nerfing of this item. I know there was just a Reddit thread recently complaining about Hullbreaker. The main thing, I honestly think I went into like a 15-minute talk about Hullbreaker and how it's just an item that is not accurately assessed. People do not actually look at the context surrounding it when it's purchased. People don't realize that oftentimes it is the matchup dynamic and the completion of either a legendary or a mythic item that swings the matchup and not actually the Hullbreaker itself. So like for instance, a lot of people used to complain about Graves when he would have a Hullbreaker in certain matchups, but without failing to while failing to realize that if Graves just had Shield Bow in the matchup, or Eclipse and having the lifesteal from Eclipse or the damage from Eclipse, that the matchup would have played out exactly the same way. And it's just the completion of the item is what allows the champion to exert dominance over you. And it's not the Hullbreaker itself. And I feel like a lot of people fail to actually see an item get completed and then assess, what sort of transformative value did the item have inside of the game, and could similar transformative value have been achieved by having a different item, or would you actually have achieved more? And I think that a lot of people don't like going into the nitty-gritty of stuff like that. They see Hullbreaker and they point at Hullbreaker as being problematic. I do agree that split pushing inside of solo queue is a real thing, but inside of competitive, it's not. And if you build Hullbreaker in competitive, you're griefing. You're actually hard griefing. One of the other things about Hullbreaker is that generally it's completed, oftentimes around anywhere from like 10 to 12 minutes. It really depends on the matchup, which generally can sometimes often end up leaving you with only like 2 waves, 3 waves, 4 waves, maybe to play with in order to get turret plates, which can equate to about a 300 gold accelerant, which does make it a tempo item inside of the early laning phase. But there are some situations where you don't get Hullbreaker that early. Now, in lanes where you're already getting access to plates early on, if you're getting access to 1 or 2 plates early on, and you are, tempo swinging yourself forward by a couple of minutes, 3 minutes or something in game, or 2.5 minutes, 2 minutes in game or something, then getting access to Hullbreaker even earlier as a legendary item can be actually kind of valuable, because then maybe you have 4 to 5 minutes to play with the remaining turret plates, and you actually use it to get the first turret as well as the remaining turret plates. And at that point, it can be good. But again, that's more centered on a matchup dynamic than it is on the actual item itself, even in those instances. And I'll make a separate highlight video about this probably in the near future. MSI Clash and client updates. The client update is there. Skin reviews. Normally I do the skin reviews, guys, but I'm not going to do it. I'm really behind. MSI is starting actually now as I'm finishing on this. I will say that for Clash, for patron people that are patrons there, thank you so much. For solo queue and Clash, there's realistically only 2 things that could maybe probably change by this patch. 12.9, Riot did state that they were kind of reserved on it because 12.10 is a really big patch. I have not looked at 12.10 yet. I do not know what 12.10 is. I know that apparently it's massive, and apparently it's overhauling the game, akin to 8.11 or 8.10 was a long time ago or something like that. So I'm very excited to look at 12.10 because I feel like it's something the game has needed for a while, is something to just massively reset, like a big reset. I've heard that it's in the opposite direction that I like. I've heard that it makes the game, they're reducing a lot of damage. I don't totally know. I will look at it. That'll be a separate video. It'll probably go up on the main channel, not on the highlights channel. And we'll see what that ends up is. But anyways, back to the main point. The 2 things that I think that, would end up being changed if I do change stuff, it would be maybe Hecarim and Olaf. Other than that, all of the nerfs and changes here don't really move any of the champions. I think it wouldn't justify moving their tier balance or anything like that. The Renekton thing is a very big buff. I do think that it will put Renekton on the radar probably for summer, because teams are just very excited to be picking this absolute steaming pile of nothingness. But that is gonna do it for the patch rundown. I'm sorry it's so sloppy. I'll talk about on stream what's going on. Yeah, I apologize that this is, I feel like it's the worst patch rundown I've done. The 12.10 patch rundown will be exquisite. That one is one that I'm looking very forward to, and I look forward, yeah. So that's it. Bye.